We post all of our webinars on our website, and we'll put the link in the chat at a couple points in the presentation. So everyone has access to the previous webinars, which can be a good, useful resource for you if you're interested in some of the learning more about some of the topics in general.
It's a webinar about metadata for like collecting out that DOE does out in the field.
Sorry, was that a question? I didn't hear all of it. Okay, yeah, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat or raise your hand or feel free to interrupt. But this is an introductory webinar today that's geared towards the new Urban Integrated Field Laboratories projects, which we're really excited to welcome to the ESS-DIVE community and to support these projects moving forward with their data management. So before we get started, we wanted to introduce ourselves briefly. I'm Joan Damerow. I'm a project scientist at Lawrence Berkeley Lab, and I help lead community engagement activities for ESS-DIVE. And Emily, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Robles. I'm a data management research associate working with ESS-DIVE. Mainly to help with dataset publication and reporting formats.
Great, thank you, Emily. Throughout the presentation today, what we want to do is provide an overview of ESS-DIVE and some of our key features and goals, and also get into some specific tools that we have that would help you with your project data management. And then in the second half of the presentation, we'll provide some resources that can help you organize and curate high quality data sets. And this includes information on our community standard reporting formats and templates that you can use to get started with those. We'll then have some time at the end to discuss data management needs that you have in each of your Urban IFL projects. And one of our overall goals is really that you'll just learn the basics on how to use ESS-DIVE features and reporting formats for your project data management and get started with publishing your data on ESS-DIVE. So we have a couple of poll questions just to see who's here and to get an idea of where you are. So our first question, and we'll put the link in the chat. Dylan just put it in there. What project or what Urban IFL project, or perhaps you've joined from another environmental system science project? We just wanted to know who's here today and what projects are represented. Okay. So if you could spell out the acronyms in the chat or like speak up and let us know what those are, that would be great. But it looks like 2 Urban IFL projects are here at least. So the Southeast Texas and Southwest Arizona focused. Okay, we have someone who's interested in learning more about Urban IFL projects. So we have 3 projects here, at least, including the Baltimore Social Environmental Collaborative IFL. Okay, great. So it looks like we have at least 3 of the 4 Urban IFL projects represented. Okay, and then the next question that we have, we just wanted to get an idea of terms that you're familiar with, because we do mention some of these and have found in the past that not all of them are intuitive for everyone. So just curious who's familiar with these terms: data package, metadata, data set, DOI or digital object identifier, and FAIR. Seems like there's pretty high familiarity across people attending today so far. Okay, that's great. And data package, we actually use interchangeably with data sets. It's a term that we've used for a while and have found not everyone's familiar with it. So a data package is really the same as a data set. And we'll talk about FAIR and some of these terms, but it looks like most people are familiar with many of the terms. So that's great. Okay. So now we can get into the presentation portion of today's webinar. We'll first provide an overview of ESS-DIVE. So some of you may have seen our introductory short presentation in the workshop that was held for the Urban IFL projects in the fall. But just to refresh your memory, ESS-DIVE is the DOE data repository for the environmental systems science program in general, and also the Urban IFL projects now. And our mission is to provide long-term preservation, broad accessibility, and improved usability of really diverse interdisciplinary data. And this includes a variety of field, lab, and model data that are representing watershed sciences, terrestrial ecology, coastal systems, and now urban ecosystems data. Previously, data stored on ESS-DIVE, again, was based on the ESS programs focused on natural ecosystems, but we will now be storing the Urban IFL project data, and I guess towards the end of today, we'll work on hearing more about your needs for that and how that might differ from the data that we've held previously. And we do have about 730 public data sets available at this time. This is growing. And I think many of you are familiar with FAIR according to the poll question, but we really work to support the FAIR principles and make data more findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And that's some of our goals and mission for ESS-DIVE. As I mentioned, the types of data that we produce in Earth and environmental sciences are really diverse, and they range across scales from molecular to regional scale data, and also in the temporal frequency of measurements. ESS-DIVE provides DOE scientists with a central location to archive this diverse environmental research data. And we provide resources for scientists to more consistently format data across projects, so that other researchers understand the data that they're searching and downloading, and potentially can reuse it in different analyses and across a different scale, or to answer new questions, potentially integrating data across projects. This slide is meant to provide a summary of how you can publish data through ESS-DIVE. And to start, what you would need to do is register to upload data with an ORCID ID, which is a unique identifier for you as a researcher. And this is because we restrict submissions to primarily environmental systems science project teams. And we now have the Urban IFL projects as listed in the projects that we support. And then Once you figure out how to organize your data into different data sets, you describe your data set within the ESS-DIVE system. We have an online web portal where you can define all of the metadata for your data set or data package. You then upload the files associated with the data set, and you can revise it until you're comfortable publishing it. You would click a publish button within your data set, within the page where you're creating the data set, and it would then go into our publication queue, where an ESS-DIVE team member does a review, assigns once you've gone through the review process and have been accepted for publication in ESS-DIVE, a DOI is assigned at that point, and the data is published and openly available for search and download within ESS-DIVE. We do offer multiple resources to support you throughout dataset creation and the publication process. You can visit our help documentation and video tutorials to get more information. We have an offline metadata guide that enables you to collaborate with team members to create your metadata before you then put this within our put your metadata in our web form for publication. We have a sandbox testing server where you can test out creating data sets and publishing them, and you can send an email to our support email service and ask us questions anytime through our support email. When you are ready to submit data, like I mentioned, we have a web form that walks you through providing all of your data set metadata. And this includes information that we need to enable effective data set searches, such as the title, the authors, and the date and location, among other fields that we have. The form includes instructions on each of the metadata fields and examples. And we also have introductory webinars on how to submit data, which you can view on our website under webinars. The form also has an automated quality report that will flag some fields that we check for in our review process. This can help expedite your data set review. So you can check this report and review any failed checks and warnings and fix any issues before you submit the data set to ESS-DIVE and click that publish button. Our ESS-DIVE search page is the primary place where you can go to find data, and it allows for filtering and searching by a number of different fields. Our data are also available on the Data One network, and you can find data sets using the Data One search tool. And this is useful if you want to find data across many other repositories. So for example, you can search for Arctic data across ESS-DIVE and the Arctic Data Center, which is another Data One repository, through the Data One interface. And finally, our data are also available through Google Dataset Search. Anyone can view and download data that's been published on ESS-DIVE. And to use the data, you can download individual files or the entire data package or data set. And when using data sets, we want to point out that it's really important to appropriately cite it in the reference section of your paper if possible. And so we do provide a copy citation button on all data set landing pages that you can use to obtain that citation. Also want to point out that every data set also has metrics available, so you can see how many times it's been viewed, downloaded, and cited, and that's shown in the gray bar towards the top underneath the citation here in the screenshot. We are a really community-focused data repository, and we have many community engagement activities that are listed here on the slide. This includes regular webinars like we're having today. We also have virtual site visits that you can request if you're interested, where we can present in one of your team meetings any topics that your team might need to learn more about, such as specific reporting formats or tools that we have, or providing an overview of ESS-DIVE. We also have an annual community workshop that is held in the fall, which is a 2-day workshop where we provide really comprehensive information about ESS-DIVE, and we really bring the community together at that point, and have a lot of interesting discussions and a number of tutorials and resources available during that workshop. So that's a great thing to keep an eye out for. And at this point, I wanted to give a brief overview of some of our project data management tools that can help you collaborate as a project. And just to provide a summary of some of these tools that are available, we have dataset sharing. So instead of working on datasets individually, you can add team members as editors or reviewers to collaboratively work on your datasets. We have data portals where you can collect all of your project datasets in one place for the public to easily access. External linking is a feature that we have. So if you already have scientifically valuable information about your data available in a different repository or another location, you can link to these resources, and we'll show you an example of that. And in general, we've been iteratively rolling out new features for project data management when they're ready, and we'll continue to do so in the near future. But we do have a new project spaces capability that will be coming out soon, and we'll bring up a little later. So dataset sharing, at this point, I'll give you a little bit more information about some of these features that we have for project data management. And dataset sharing gives you the ability to let other team members, again, review, edit, and manage private datasets. This feature is easily accessible via the share button when you're editing a dataset and creating a dataset. There's this share button over in the right corner here. But there are a couple of important things to keep in mind. You can select what your team members are able to do with your data sets through our permissions, and your team members must be registered as data contributors. So if you're interested in using some of these project features, you can just coordinate with your team members who you want to work with on these data sets and make sure that they're all registered as data contributors. And as I just mentioned, you are able to select what your team members are allowed to do with your data set, and we call these permission types. So we have a tiered approach to data set sharing permissions, where each level gives incrementally more ability to change and manage things on the data set. So a viewer can view private data sets, and then an editor, in addition to viewing the data sets, can also edit metadata, add or remove files, and publish the data set. And then a manager can do all of these things. In addition, they can share data sets with others. From a PI or data manager perspective, it'll be important to have team members share data sets from the project with you, so you can access and report on some of the project data publication that's going on with the project. And so when you have permissions, you can view both private and public data sets generated by the project and verify that data sets are being published on time. You can track how many data sets are on ESS-DIVE, and generally just have the ability to review data set content for publication. So the next feature that we want to talk about today is data portals. And this is a collection of any ESS-DIVE data sets. And it allows you to easily highlight and share related data sets, for example, for a specific project. Using portals, you can create custom descriptive pages that outline the overall goals and information about your project or other data collections, and you can add photos and other contextual information that describes the purpose of this collection, and can be really useful to describe the collection of data sets that you have. We do also have cumulative metrics available. So when you create a portal, we generate a page on metrics, and there are many useful metrics that you can explore. You'll see a summary of all of the holdings within your collection, and you'll also see cumulative view, download, and citation metrics for all of those data sets. And again, what this portal does is it creates this publicly available collection of data sets. So instead of seeing all of the data sets like you would in our general search page, when you visit a portal, you see only the set of data sets that you have in that specific portal. So in general, these portals can increase the findability of project-specific data sets. Again, you can collect these cumulative metrics across all of your data sets. And another useful thing is that you could link to your project data portal in your annual reports or paper publications. And we do have a public listing of all data portals on our data portal, our ESS-DIVE data page. So you'll see a list of all portals that have been published previously, and once you publish your portal, that'll show up on this page as well. And when you can, similar to data sets, you can share your portals, so you can collaboratively create your portal. And we have the same permission types for portal sharing as we do for data set sharing, where you can assign specific people to be able to view, edit, or manage your portal. External linking is another feature that may be useful for your project, where if you have data stored in other locations, you can directly link to those in your dataset metadata on ESS-DIVE. And when you do this, some or all of the data files don't necessarily have to be uploaded and stored on ESS-DIVE, but instead we can provide a link to those resources. Currently, this feature you have to request using our support email. We don't enable people to do this currently through our user interface online. So this feature may evolve over time, but just so you know, if you're interested in external linking, you can send us a support email and we can set that up for you. And this is what it looks like. So we have on our dataset landing pages, there is a section for the files included in the dataset. And then right below there, we have, if you've worked with us to set up external links, right below where the files would be, we have a list of any external links associated with the data set, so people can directly access those from the dataset landing page. And looking ahead, one of the features that we're working on and will be coming out very soon is project spaces. And what these are collaborative workspaces that build on the portals concept of creating a project data collection. And this will allow projects to manage who's allowed to upload data for their project, and also enable project data managers to curate data for a project. It would allow people within your project to share the data within the team to promote internal collaboration. And we will be having a webinar to go through this new feature when it becomes available. We at this point have a controlled list of all of projects that are supported by ESS-DIVE. I think we have over 400 projects now that are part of ESS-DIVE, and those include the 4 Urban IFL projects. We do know that sometimes project information can change over time, and we just want to let you know that the default project information provided to ESS-DIVE when the funding was awarded is what we have as a default in our project list in the database that we have for projects now. So if you, for any reason, need to make changes to your project information or your project title, you would need to send a support email to us to arrange for that. We're going to switch gears and talk about organizing your data. And I think Emily is going to take over at this point.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So in this section, we are going to transition into discussing some best practices, recommended consideration, and ESS-DIVE requirements for organizing your data, as well as an introduction to the ESS-DIVE reporting formats. Good. Next. So at the highest level, there are 2 main components that make up a data set: the data files and the package level metadata. And yeah, you can just click, I think there's one more, yeah, and metadata. So each data set should include enough data necessary for replication, or in the case of data sets related to publications, all files relevant to the scientific findings of the paper, and figures or tables should be organized together. And then metadata will allow others to understand and use your data. It can describe the purpose of your data, the contents of data files, including variables, and the temporal or geographic information where necessary. Click through. You may be interested in publishing data for a variety of reasons, but the main 2 motivations are archiving data related to paper publications, or data collected as a part of a project with funding requirements related to data publication. Regardless of the main motivations for publishing, you do want to make sure that you are publishing scientifically useful information that can be used by others. Next. Before creating data sets, we recommend thinking about the following questions. Beyond being related to paper or funding requirements, what is your motivation for collecting data? Were you interested in gathering data from a specific location or time span, or maybe you are interested in a singular data type? And then also thinking about how your data is going to be used by others, or how you can reuse your own data in the future, because publishing data isn't just beneficial for other researchers, and creating a plan for your data will allow you to easily access and reuse it in the future to address other research questions. And then lastly, we recommend thinking about the context necessary for understanding your data. And these questions are generally captured by these 4 main considerations here for how to divide your data into individual data sets. So author, campaign or time period, and data type, and then also thinking about the size of your data. For example, if you want to publish data related to a publication, you don't necessarily need to publish all of that data in a single data set if you think it would be difficult for yourself or others to download from ESS-DIVE. And then you always have the option to use the related references metadata field on ESS-DIVE to link and associate related data sets if you're splitting data into multiple data sets, if that makes the most sense. And these are all recommendations, not requirements. So at the end of the day, you know your data best. And as long as you consider how your data is going to be used during the planning process, we really trust your decisions for organization. And if you'd like additional guidance for consideration, I'd encourage you to take a look at Data One's Data Management Skill Building Hub, which has some really great content on best practices for deciding what data you should preserve when you're getting started. Now you can go next. An option to improve the quality of your data sets is to utilize ESS-DIVE's metadata and data reporting formats, which provide consistent method of formatting your data. And use of reporting formats can benefit individual data contributors, projects and teams, and data users. As an individual data contributor, increased visibility can promote research and may increase citation of your work. And organizing data can allow researchers to store all location and sample information in a really standardized way. And then turnover within a project can be a really serious pain point for data management, and consistently formatting your data from the start can really help new project members understand existing project data, and it can enable easier analysis and integration of data across a project. And then for data users, the reporting formats offer easy access to dataset metadata and benefits to analysis. So all in all, these reporting formats are tools to increase the efficiency of managing data, both at the individual and project level, in addition to providing a foundation for analysis and integration tools for data users. Go next. So here's a quick overview of all of the reporting formats that are currently available for use, and then one that is in the development and feedback stage now, which is the drone reporting format led by Kim Eli and Sean Serban at Brookhaven National Lab. And as you can see, 8 of these reporting formats are data file focused, while the remaining 5 offer a standardized formatting for your metadata. And for each of these formats, community projects were funded through ESS-DIVE, and each team developing a reporting format first reviewed any already existing standards and reporting practices specific to their field of research, and then they drafted templates and documentation and received several rounds of feedback from communities of scientists that would eventually be using the reporting formats themselves. If you want to learn more about the efforts to create the reporting formats and assuring that they're all compatible, I've included the citation to a paper led by Rob Crystal Ornelas, which goes into detail about their formation. Next. So reporting formats offer multiple levels of guidance, from structuring and formatting data to describing data, and even the organization of specific data types for integration and analysis. And at the highest level, package level metadata is required for all ESS-DIVE datasets. So this includes required fields like dataset abstracts and data collection methods, as well as complete titles and author information. And the workflow that we recommend is to choose first from the high-level reporting formats that can be applied to a wide range of data types, then choose domain-specific reporting formats where appropriate. And then once all of your files are ready, you can provide file-level metadata and submit your data set to ESS-DIVE. Yeah. Thanks. So let's talk about that last step before submitting your data set, which is the file level metadata. File level metadata, or the FLMD reporting format, is one of the most broadly applicable reporting formats available and can be submitted with all data sets. It might be a new concept for new people, so just to provide a definition here, file level metadata is granular information at the data file level. So it's metadata about an individual file within your data set, instead of metadata about your entire data set, which would be package level metadata. And the FLMD reporting format effort was led by Terry Veliquette at Oak Ridge National Lab, and it helps people that want to reuse your data understand what's contained within a single file in your data set without necessarily having to open the data file and inspect it. And then also down the road, we envision the FLMD as enabling automatic parsing of data files so that users can more easily search, not just for data packages that they're interested in, but for components of a data set that they need for their analysis. Next. So here's an example of what a completed file level metadata file would look like. So this is a file that is added to the rest of your data files and submitted as a data set. For each reporting format, there are often a set of required information and then a set of optional additional information that can be included. In this case, the required information for the FLMD would be the file name and file description, while additional information about the standard that each file follows and the UTC offset are also included in this case. Next. And then another widely applicable reporting format that I want to mention is the CSV reporting format, which was also an effort led by Terry. CSV files are non-proprietary and very common file format of tabular data. And the CSV reporting format itself has a set of 12 recommendations that can help you structure your individual CSV files. And using this format will make your CSVs easier to read by computers and by humans because it offers a way of organizing your data and different parts of your CSV files. And it also will really help to reduce inconsistencies across data sets or inconsistencies we see sometimes even within the same CSV file. Go next. So all of our reporting format documentation is hosted on the version control platform GitHub, which has been really essential for tracking any updates to the reporting formats during their formation. And moving forward, it will remain our primary location for receiving feedback. So if you're interested in checking out any of the reporting formats, you can view instructions and templates here, as well as leave any feedback as issues. And we also recommend taking a look at the website version of this documentation, which can be accessed through our guide to using ESS-DIVE. Then next slide. And I'll just conclude here by pointing out that we are always happy to help, and there are a number of ways that you can connect with our team for more information. And I will pass it back to you, Joan.
Yeah, so we've gone through a lot at this point, trying to cover our primary features and our reporting format information. So I wanted to stop here and allow plenty of time for questions if you have any. So feel free to enter questions into the chat or to raise your hand if you have any questions at this point about any of the features or reporting formats. Okay, so we have one question in the chat. How long will the review process take? How soon will I get a DOI after you publish data in ESS-DIVE? So do you want to answer that, Emily?
Yeah, I can answer. So the initial review of a data set, we say will take a week at the most. And then after that initial review, we will provide you with any revision request if necessary. And so the time to publication kind of depends on how long it takes for those revisions to be made and that communication to come back to ESS-DIVE for the second review. But yeah, generally that initial review, I would say 3 to 5 days at most. And then, yeah, after that, it's really just communication, but definitely taking a look at all of our requirements and documentation for required metadata before submitting a data set really helps to expedite that review process and get your data published as soon as possible.
Okay, we have another question in the chat from Greg Garfin. Do you have any accommodation for social science data, like surveys and interviews? We do not. Charu, do you want to say anything about what recommendations for social science data?
Yeah, so we don't have any sort of, if you're asking for recommendations, there's a couple things as part of your user agreement. When you agree to submit data, you do have to sign off on there being no personal information, so no PII, because we're, as a DOE system, we cannot be hosting PII. So any sort of human or social science related data would have to adhere to that. And I'm assuming you would clear that with your organization's IRB protocols before you submit that. So that is, we don't do that, but we assume you would have done that as part of submitting it. I think the social science aspect is something new we're sort of entering into as part of the program itself. So that's something I think we need to have a conversation on, is what's specifically different, what types of standards do you even need or want for interviews, and specifically thinking through the IRB process and when and where some of those accommodations need to be made. At the very least, we may need a specific statement that acknowledges that you've had the respective reviews and before submitting data. But this is new to us, so this is partly why we wanted to hold this webinar, to hear what you all need from us, in terms of social science data. I hope that answered a little bit of the question. It's probably, we don't have, the frank answer is we don't really have exact processes, but we do, just so you know, we do our own interviews and we do our own surveys within ESS-DIVE. So at least we're familiar with the whole process of getting approvals and things like that. So.
Okay. And then I see another question. We do have a prior DOI input in the metadata for datasets. And the question was, if you use this field, will it use the prior DOI or a new one? So yes, if your exact dataset has already been published, the prior DOI can be used and we do not have to generate a new one. But if any components of the data are different, we really recommend having a new DOI generated. And depending on where your data was originally published, this could also be a case where you kind of explore the external linking feature that Joan had originally talked about earlier in the presentation, and definitely reach out to our support if you have any question about that. Then there's another, is file level metadata required? What if I have a large number of files to publish? Is there a way to automate the creation of the file level metadata? So at this point, the FLMD reporting format is not required. It is very highly recommended though. If you have a large number of files that you're publishing and you want to use the FLMD, there is a kind of like wild card that you can use. So if all of those files are following a similar format or have similar metadata, you can use that to have a singular entry in the FLMD format apply to multiple files. We do not have a way to automate the publish or the creation of the FLMD file yet, but there are some scripts that other projects have been using, and I can definitely put you in contact with some of them if that's something that you're interested in down the line. But yeah, of course.
And I just want to add that automation of some of these metadata are actually kind of project specific. So it's a little bit difficult for ESS-DIVE to create scripts that would automate, because it requires something that's very specific to your project. So it's usually done at the project level, but I think what we can facilitate is sharing scripts across projects so you can build up what other people have done, but then customize it for your specific needs.
Okay, are there any other questions before we move on to a discussion? Okay, another question. How will ESS-DIVE handle data updates? Like appending new data or changing an existing data. So you are able to update your data in your data sets, but when you upload a new file, for example, you'll go through the review process again. We also, in some cases, depending on how much your data is changing, recommend just submitting a new data set. So one common way, for example, if you have data that's updated continuously, you could update, or you could publish data based on time periods and submit a new data set for new data. But we do enable you to keep the same DOI for certain updates depending on what your needs are.
I think there was a question regarding model outputs and how large it can be. And one thing that we haven't really covered extensively here, but we will be talking about it in the ESS-PI meeting in May, is we are releasing a new capability that allows us to store much larger data. It's called Tier 2 storage that allows us to use Globus and other tools to access larger data sets. We already can take pretty large data sets through our API. Pretty large, is subjective depending on what type of model outputs you're familiar with. But if you have really large data, then have a conversation with us. We're happy to look at your model data use cases and see whether that can fit within our new Tier 2 storage capabilities.
Yeah, so these have all been really great questions. Are there any more? So does ESS-DIVE offer web services that we can leverage to allow users to visualize and subset data? We do not currently.
Well, I can answer that. So we have a public API where you can access the data. And then we do have some tutorials. Actually, we did a demonstration at our community webinar, and we'll be doing another tutorial at the PI meeting for data use, where if the data were in a reporting format, that's the benefit, is that we then have ability to write tools that can then look inside the data and extract it. But if the data are not in reporting format, then that's hard for us to figure out how it needs to be extracted and write that in a generalizable way. So that's partly why we're strongly recommending the use of these formats, because it is in our plans even this year to start checking files for these reporting formats. And then as we go forward, we would be able to start writing tools that enable exactly that, the visualization and subsetting and other things. And also we're building a new feature, which is not really here, but you could talk to us again about it later on if any of you're visiting the PI meeting. We have a feature called the Fusion database that's really, again, meant to be looking inside the data files, extracting it and visualizing it. So there's a couple of different features, but it does require the use of data being submitted in standardized formats.
Okay, and the next question is, what software did you use to build the repository and portals?
We're using Metacat, which is a Data One software. And we have a partnership with Data One and NCs and we've had it since the start of the repository.
Okay. Well, thanks for all of the great questions. We do have a few discussion questions to get an idea of what some of your needs are. But actually, I do want to start with this poll question on what data types you're planning to collect. So I think this will help us get an idea of maybe some of the common data types. across the projects. So if you could use the same poll everywhere link that's in the chat again. Sensor data. Microclimate. Doppler LiDAR, model output, net CDF, air quality, building energy use, qualitative survey and focus group. Someone who's potentially going to use the data from ESS-DIVE. WRF model output, hydrology, water quality, soil chemistry, and moisture, leaf gas exchange. So it seems like there are some that are definitely relevant for some of our data specific reporting formats. Looks like the responses are slowing, but air quality, model output, survey data, soil chemical fluxes. Okay, I'm going to move on since the responses seem to be slowing. I'm going to skip some of these so we can have a little bit of time to discuss some of the data management needs. We have some shared notes, so maybe that can help us since we probably don't have time to we definitely don't have time to get through all of these. We did have a space in our notes for some responses for each of the specific Urban IFL projects, and Dylan just put the link in the chat to our shared notes. Let's see, are you seeing? Do you see the shared notes now, or is it still the presentation?
Yeah, we can see the notes.
Okay. So
Increase the size, Joan. Yeah, it's better. Thank you.
So we have just a section for each project to provide some answers. So I think what we could do is just start with some of these questions, and if you have time to fill this out, that would be great. So one of our first questions was, are you planning to use existing standards or formats for your data? And if so, which ones? And so what you could do is enter some information here or speak up, and so we can have a discussion on some of these. And I think we did have someone from at least 3 of the different projects, so it'll be great to hear from at least someone from the different projects that we have. And from the responses, it did seem like there was some overlap with our reporting formats. So if you're interested in those and want to learn more about those, let us know. So we have a space for the Baltimore project, and it seems like they're still figuring out details. But considering net CDF and CSV.
Seeing a comment here with respect to transportation data, can someone describe what type of data that is? Is that just sensors that are mobile sensors on a car, or is that something specifically more like traffic volumes or something? Can you be a bit more specific about that?
I can't be very specific, but the two examples that you gave, I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, so I think with respect to sort of the mobile sensors, that's a little bit more, I think we don't have a specific reporting format, but I think a lot of our sensor formats can accommodate that in general, because it's just, you need a lat long, and that's an optional field. Because in many cases, if you have a fixed sensor, the lat long is the same, but if you have a mobile sensor, your lat long is changing. So as long as you can report that in a way that should be adaptable for that type of need where you have a mobile sensor in a car and that's moving around. The transportation networks, that's new again to us. So I think that we would need to have a little bit more of a conversation on what that looks like to understand that. They probably also have standards in that space, which the mobility kind of space, we'd have to investigate that.
So our next question that we wanted to get an idea of is considering some of your data types, do you think there's a need to develop any standard community formats across the Urban IFL projects for any specific data type? Have you thought about anything like that? It looks like the one thing that came up is possibly some social science data, like some guidance for surveys, interviews, and focus groups. And then in the chat, I'm seeing common approaches for mapping spatial data. And urban flux towers.
We're running low on time. I just want to add that this is, the first of many conversations we want to have with the urban IFLs. And, for example, the urban flux towers may require coordination more with the Ameriflux standards and expansion there than something ESS-DIVE could specifically do. But we really want to hear about, what challenges you're having that's maybe unique to your projects that we need to consider. In addition, there's features that you see on ESS-DIVE that you want on ESS-DIVE that we're not supporting, then those are things we want to hear about. And so, as Joan mentioned, we have a number of different ways. This is usually we do these site visits and we try to visit projects and have a discussion. And we're happy to have more or specifically talk about your IFL and come to one of your all hands meetings or something like that if you want to have a bit more specific and tailored conversation to your project. So I just wanted to kind of end with that just to make sure that, this is just the start. This is not the end. It's not like we're presenting something and this is all we have to offer. And also a number of us will be at the PI meeting, Joan, Emily, and I. And so if any of you are there, you're welcome to come up and chat with us also in person or schedule one-on-ones offline following this webinar. And yes, it's a good point that other ARM data are also things that we would want to align with. And we do have a model data archiving paper also that's recommendations for model outputs that could put in the chat.
Yeah, so we're at time, so we can stop there, but I do encourage you to fill out some of the other questions if you can, to provide some information on what your needs are and what your challenges are. And otherwise, yeah, well, we look forward to hearing from you in the future, and thank you for joining. Emily, you could stop recording.